Good Sunday morning. I'm Jaden Jefferson, and welcome to this week's Community Focus. My guest this week is Toledo City Council member at large, Matt Driscoll, to discuss Mayor Wade Capsicavage's proposed $365.2 million budget. Now, 64% of that budget goes to public safety, police, and fire. So that's why we started there first.
It always is a large part of our budget. It should be a large part of our budget. Public safety is the first and foremost responsibility of any elected official at any level. So we're very proud to show our values to the voters, to the citizens, by making sure we invest a very large amount of our budget into public safety. Obviously, a large part of that is staff. So we will be bringing on a new fire and police class, which is very exciting. And we want to make sure that the size of our public safety forces is fit to the size of our city. So we want to make sure that we have the appropriate number of police officers, the appropriate number of emergency responders. And this budget continues to add new classes, which is good. There's a little bit of money in capital spending for new vehicles and public safety, but by and large, that figure you quoted is largely based on staff.
And kind of speak to the technology and some of the needs of these departments. Obviously, technology can sometimes play a role in what their needs are, but then at the same time, staffing, as you mentioned. And so what is the process like when it comes to communicating with police and fire about what their needs are, and then, of course, ensuring those needs are met, and then also ruling out what maybe isn't needed?
Yes, and there are lots of, if we had a bottomless budget, we would make lots of different technological advances with our police and fire budget. We do what we can, and we make investments that the chief recommends. The chief has 30 plus years of experience working in the Toledo police force. We take his recommendation very seriously. One of the exciting programs we're bringing on is a drone program for the city of Toledo. So in instances where there are high-speed chases, police officers will be able to man a drone from a remote location and follow somebody who's in pursuit. And that way we don't have to send an officer speeding through a neighborhood because that obviously puts the public at more risk when there's multiple cars involved in a high-speed chase. So that's an exciting new example of some of the technology we're going to be utilizing. If we had a bottomless budget, we would do more in that technology space, but we do what we can with what we have to make sure that our police force has the tools they need to be successful. We will be adding to our police fleet vehicle, replacing some of our police force vehicles, and we'll also be adding at least one ambulance, and I believe a fire truck as well this year to our emergency responders.
Income taxes are the primary supporter of this budget. Obviously, the city collects revenue from other sources, but income taxes make up the bulk of that. And there is in the budget $3.3 million that goes to economic development and activities that support that, as well as the individuals that work in that department. So in terms of economic development, do you think that the city has enough money to support the economic development needs of searching for future companies to come to Toledo, or even just helping the companies that are already here?
The answer is no. Over the course of the last few years, we've had the ARPA dollars from the federal government to spend, and we've done a lot of good things with that money. And so I'm proud of the past council and also what I've been able to do since I've been appointed to council. With that being said, the residents of the city expect the basic services. They expect potholes to be filled, leaves to be picked up. They expect a robust public safety force, and we absolutely that should be a large part of our budget, and it is. But we also need to be prepared to understand what our business model as a city is, and we, like you mentioned, we are largely based on income taxes, which means we need to be making investments around housing and attracting new jobs. We need to be attracting new residents and attracting new jobs, because that's how we will continue to grow our tax base. Because if we don't grow our tax base, we're going to have to ask more from the folks who already live here, and that's not something politicians like to do, and it's not something people don't always like to be taxed. So we need to make sure that we can grow our economy, and yes, that our economic development budget is too small. We have to adjust to a post-COVID reality, so we have to adjust to a reality of not having the ARPA money that we had before, and we probably need to talk seriously about a 5-year vision for the city of Toledo that makes sure that we're not spending from our budget stabilization fund, that makes sure that we are not transferring from our capital improvement fund to our general fund, and then also a budget that makes sure that we can invest in the future of the city. So we can invest in future job attraction, invest in future housing opportunities. We know there's housing demand inside the city, so we need to make sure we're investing in that, getting a hold of sites, making sure sites are ready for new investment from the private sector. But you're right, it is too small. And over the course of the next couple of years, we need to work to change that. These budgets are looked at as a one-year basis, which makes sense. But I think those of us in government need to make sure that we're taking a long-term view about the sustainability of the city, and make the slow but necessary changes to make sure that in the future we can make those kinds of we can do that kind of spending around economic development and housing, to make sure that we are growing the city and growing our tax base.
Yeah, you're right. As the tax base as well as the state of the local economy, they definitely do go hand in hand. And you also mentioned another important part here, which is ARPA dollars, those American Rescue Plan Act funds that the federal government distributed to cities across the country. This budget does not have those. And one of the key parts of the ARPA dollars, the way we spent them, was investing in parks and youth services. Now, in this budget, without those ARPA dollars, we're at about $6.6 million. And so, what ways do you see the city supporting a lot of the youth programming that came out of those ARPA dollars, or how it evolves with a little less money to work with?
Yeah, we have about $250,000 set aside for youth programming for this summer and fall. That is not nearly the level it was when we had the ARPA dollars. It's unfortunate. I think youth programming is incredibly important. You have to give kids something to do, something to aspire to, something to do when they're not in school. And so to me, youth programming is very important. Like I said, we're spending about $250,000. That's not enough, but I will say that before ARPA came in, we were spending exactly $0 on youth programming. So it represents an increase from a normal environment. It does not represent an increase from the ARPA environment, but it represents an increase from what we were doing typically as a city. So I'm proud to say we're making that spend. And not every program that we did, we threw a lot of spaghetti at the wall to see what would stick. And so now we have a better sense of what programs are popular, and what programs, maybe weren't as popular. So we might be able to spend that money a little more efficiently, too, this upcoming year. And I very much trust the administration and our Commissioner of Youth Services to make those decisions. And I think we'll do well by them. I should mention too that there's absolutely a necessary function for the state of Ohio in the upcoming capital budget to fund programs exactly like this. And we're doing our part at $250,000, but the state should at least match it.
And I definitely want to add the fact that the residents of the community have had the opportunity to chime in on this budget during some different meetings. I just want to ask you, what were some suggestions, criticisms, or maybe even some agreements that stood out to you in hearing from residents?
Yeah, I think chief among them is what I hear is that residents really expect the basic services to be covered. So they want a robust public safety force. They want to make sure that we're filling potholes and sweeping the streets and those types of things. It's incumbent upon us in government, I think, to see the bigger picture and to sometimes make the investments that a resident might not ask for, in terms of housing or job attraction, those sorts of things. But the commentary that I get from the public is largely based around making sure that we have enough cops and firefighters on the street, making sure that we're doing mowing our parks and providing the basic services that they expect. So that's typically what I hear from them. And there was a property reevaluation in the past year, so a lot of folks' property taxes are going up. And so they're especially interested in making sure that we're spending their tax dollars efficiently.
Now, you and your colleagues on City Council have until March 31st. That's the deadline to pass this budget. Do you think that everyone is kind of in a place where that can happen?
Council President Hartman, the chairman of the Finance Committee, George Tarantu, and I, and the council staff and the mayor's staff have worked diligently going back to May of this past year, to make sure that we pass the budget quicker than we ever have before. The administration deserves a lot of credit for this, as well as the council staff, to make sure that we are prepared to pass that. It's my understanding that based on the current schedule, without any protestations from members of council, we should pass this budget before the end of January, which will be quite a bit ahead of schedule compared to years past.
Well, that's an example of local government working a lot faster than federal government for sure. Councilman Driscoll,
sure.
Thanks so much for your time.
Thanks, Jaden. Have a happy holidays.
Thank you. You too. And that's this week's Community Focus. I'm Jaden Jefferson, and have a great rest of your day.